Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capsule. It is Friday, June 17th, 2022. It's another working day, and I say that because some of us have probably taken the day off today, and that's fine, We're all allotted time off. But we're here in studio this morning as we seek to continue the conversations of the latest happenings here in Trinidad and Tobago. And boy, oh boy, what a day off it was. A lot of news took place, and of course, we can't get into everything because we still have things to discuss that transpired earlier this week. So the good thing is we never really run out of content here on Talking Point. Now, alongside me for the discussions this morning is my co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And yes, as you predicted, and I guess it would be obvious to most Trinis and to most Tobagonians, the Friday after a public holiday is an informal public holiday. Now, hopefully, none of you who have decided to take the holiday did so in a fashion to get yourself in trouble, but I noticed the lack of cars on the road. Now, usually Friday for me on my route to get to the office, there's less traffic than say Tuesday or Monday, but today it was void of just about
I think you were rather lucky because even though there was noticeably less cars on the road this morning and the traffic was actually moving, it still took me the same amount of time to get to work. So,
that's incredible. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't understand it at all. The only thing I could say is probably the traffic lights again entering the capital city they don't synchronize at all. So I don't know if that's what caused it, but that's part of the problem.
And I'd just like to point out also, it seems as though, and I could be wrong, this is the first time I've seen it in I don't know how many months, or I guess at this point maybe we could even say years, but we have 0 COVID deaths reported today. So we just have one small piece of good news. Unfortunately, the rest of the country isn't necessarily helping us go in that right direction.
And just to add to that, the first case of monkeypox was actually scanned in Venezuela. It was from
our borders are secure, Keaton. We don't have to worry about that.
I'm not too sure.
The Minister of National Security is on the border in a pirogue right now, making sure no monkeypox is coming into the country. Right, Minister Hines?
Are you calling Camille Pascal Minister Hines?
Oh, no.
Because with this via Zoom this morning...
I will not dare to... Let me not say what I was going to say.
With us via Zoom this morning is our colleague, Mr. Camille Pascal, former youth parliamentarian. Camille, good morning.
Good morning, Keaton. Good morning, Sean. Good morning to all our viewers and listeners, especially those who would have taken the day today to make it an extra long weekend.
Yes, well, Camille, we hope you had a great day off. We know you're back out to work today, but thank you very much for joining us. And I do apologize for my co-host's faux pas referring to you.
I did not.
He looked dead into the camera.
Yes, because the viewers, which might include either Minister Hines or someone on his staff in the Ministry of National Security, because, yes, folks, if you don't know, organizations, ministries, state entities, they all pay people to monitor the media. And it's not just the censorship boards or whatever, the media association or whatever. We're talking the police. Trust me, I know, because I used to do that job for one entity. So somebody will hopefully relay my message to Mr. Hines and ensure that he's on that pirogue.
Well, let's hope that pirogue actually is sufficiently fueled with gas.
I was not about to say that.
Anyway, let's get into the program. So, as we all know, camera phones, videos, social media has become part of our daily routine and our daily lives. And in that happening, they've also allowed us to see certain things transpiring across Trinidad and Tobago, most notably a lot of crime and criminal activity. But it's now the TTPS that is once more under fire. Now, let me state one time, one video that is 1 minute and 26 seconds long does not necessarily speak the entire story. And let me also say that we do not have every single video. We only have a video that was part of an incident that took place I think it was called Jam Naked yesterday morning at the Queen's Park Savannah. Now, the video circulating on social media shows a police officer, two police officers actually scuffling with two patrons. According to the police report, one of the men is said to be a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. Now, the video continues and it shows the police officers, well, according to some people, using excessive force, which I think it's undermining what actually happened with the police officer kicking one of the patrons in the head. So we're going to show you the video now, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards. But again, let me state it, let me make it clear. One video does not show or speak for the entire story.
Hey, boy! Hey, boy! Hey, let's get back to it! Let's get back to it! Let's get back to it!
It's just one video, and there are very many circulating on social media. And as I said, we only were able to get this one. But let me just briefly give you the story, Sean. I think you're up to date with the story, and I think Camille is also up to date, but let me just relate to it. There are many videos, and according to the details of the incident, it is stated that when one of the individuals tried to enter the FET, his ticket was not scanning. He became very irate, and when he became irate, apparently he tried to break through the gate to the FET. He got in, and according to police reports, as well as witnesses on the ground. And I think that's very, very important because we're very quick to chastise the police. According to witnesses on the ground, he jump kicked one of the officers. That is when the officers actually started becoming physical with the individual and restraining him. However, though the individual jump kicked one of the officers, it still does not warrant a police officer using that level of force. If you have to subdue the man by throwing him on the ground, which we have seen many instances before, I think we could all understand and accept that. Because even members in the crowd stated that you cannot jump kick a police officer and then try to get away with it. But the police officer, in his duty, kicking the individual in his head, that really, really twists things a lot more. Now the focus is on the TTPS. Sean, this is another incident in which we're seeing the TTPS using what many are referring to as excessive force.
So I said it last week, I believe. I'm not sure if I said it on air, but basically with regards to being shot by the police. If you don't want to be shot by the police, the first thing you have to check off on the list is don't shoot at the police. If you don't want to get into a fight with the police, the first step would be don't physically strike a police officer. Now, if you manage to check that box off and you're still in an altercation and you've checked off other similar boxes, then fine. But if you engage, right, I'm not saying what the police did is right, necessarily. But if you strike an officer, don't expect, for them to treat you with all decorum and customer service, professionalism. Don't expect that, right? So to the gentleman that jump kicked the officer, that's very foolish. Now, with that said, the kicks to the man's head, like I understand, yes, you're going to use a certain amount of physical force to restrain him. The police have every right to restrain him because at that point he has shown that he's willing to use violence. But it was 2 kicks in that video, at the very least. Both of them were completely unnecessary. It's already in the ground. It's to the back of the head. That's an illegal blow in professional fighting.
I mean,
for a reason.
Right, exactly. So, and I'm glad that you mentioned professional fighting as well. Simply because what would have happened if that individual sustained life-threatening injuries?
Or not even life-threatening. He could have suffered brain damage and be mentally impaired after one of those kicks, if not both. He's already in the ground. So I get it, he jump kicked you. But first of all, I highly doubt he is some hidden grandmaster from up the mountain whose jump kicks could fell trees in one blow. Like, how much damage did he really do to you with that clumsy jump kick he did to FET? I don't even know if he might already been turned up on some alcohol already. So, yeah, was it warranted, the response? Probably not, but again, if you don't want to get hit, don't strike at police officers first. So it's not necessarily to say one is right and one is wrong. Both had their errors of the day.
Camille, it's amazing. Video footage now, again, it doesn't show the entire story, but in a court of law, we're still trying to decipher whether or not videos taken by patrons can be used as evidence. I know that is being debated in Parliament, and it was being debated a couple of weeks ago by a committee. But in this entire thing, the police officers at the end of the day, focus has now, it's now been pinpointed upon the TTPS.
Yes. So let us make it clear, let me make it clear, and not on behalf of myself alone, but on your behalf as well, that one, we have not seen the entire video. And secondly, I would also like to make it clear that we do not condone any form of violence by civilians, being regular citizens, towards the police. So once we have that down pat, the viewers know where our position lies. But the matter is that those 2 kicks that Sean would have spoken about, that was clearly excessive force. And not only can it have physical damage, but there can also be lasting damage. If you listen to the video just on a regular phone, if without a headset, you can actually hear the last kick that the officer ran in with. You can actually hear it. Now, the guy obviously was wrong for even attempting to kick the police. That we are very, very clear on that, and we do acknowledge that. But the way in which the police handled the matter was not in light. I mean, people would say, yes, but you came with force. But the police are trained to deal with situations like that, and the way how they handle it is that they took off the police hat, in my opinion, and they put on a regular hat. But you are police 24/7. You don't get to not become a police because you're not in uniform. You are police 24/7, and so they literally took off their police hat and they went in as a regular person fighting another person when they do have the means to restrain and subdue the individual or any individual in a particular manner.
I believe this is an argument for taser guns and pepper sprays once more. And in fact, it's also being reported that one of the officers, it
Yes.
seems as though, was holding pepper spray in his
Yes.
hand. Another aspect of it that I was looking at, and I know this may be very minor, not directly related to the incident, but I know long ago you were not allowed to open bars or operate bars on a religious public holiday. And the thing is now, I guess we're having fetes on a religious public holiday it's called Naked Jam, and usually that will throw up an entire commerce within the public space, but that's another issue, and that's something minor. But nevertheless, if you try to resist arrest and you get physical with officers, I cannot then blame officers for becoming physical with you. I cannot blame officers for doing whatever is necessary in order to restrain you. However, I will always say that officers, though they are to enforce the law, they are not immune to the law.
So it would be quick to see a situation like that and see 4 officers gang up on him and it's like, oh gosh, excessive force. Well, the ganging up is not the problem. Ironically speaking, with pepper spray and to some extent taser guns, but especially I would say pepper spray. That's not something that you necessarily just want to employ if you don't have to, which is why the Ministry of National Security is going through a process to make it legal to be used, because it might not necessarily threaten the person's life, but it could still potentially injure the person in a significant long-term way. So you don't necessarily want to just use it willy-nilly. They had numbers on their side. I don't even think all of the officers were engaged in trying to subdue the individual. And like, one of the things you always see it in movies when there's a prisoner in prison that they need to I guess, secure in his room. He might be making too much noise, causing too much commotion. You'll see like 4, 5, or 6 officers in riot gear just pile in. And you use that overwhelming force to control the prisoner so that completely, so that there's no chance of him fighting and there being a struggle where the prisoner or the officers, right, but again, as well as the prisoner, suffers injury. With 4 police officers trying to detain him, you don't need to use striking. You could literally just gang up on him and wrestle him to the ground. I mean, yes, there have been situations where a very large individual has been able to shake off 2 or 3 police officers who are smaller than him. But these officers, generally speaking, I think had a physical advantage of size and weight, and they should have training to, as a group, safely bring him down. Now, it's not necessarily going to be pleasant, right? He's going to probably, eat a little bit of the concrete, but he's not going to be jammed into the concrete. He's just going to be put on the floor. His face is not actually going to hit the ground hard, but he might actually be shoved down and weight might be put on him, not necessarily in the manner of one famous case on his neck. but the body weight used to subdue him. You have 3 or 4 guys, that is relatively easy. The long-term effects, when done properly, should be negligible to non-existent.
Camille, I don't think using the excuse of officers' frustration in instances like this in trying to carry out their duty, I don't think that is a good enough explanation. I know that the question now is, do officers go through courses every year, refresher courses every year in terms of their training? Because I'm pretty sure that now and again, there are new strategies that will come up, that will be formulated in order to deal with situations like these. And you have to wonder if they go through refresher courses.
Sure. So the thing about it is that many people are using the argument that, well, they would have physically used force against the officers, meaning the persons who were arrested. But I don't buy the argument that because they use force against them, that means that we should go in that particular direction. In fact, I share the view that meeting criminality with criminality is simply myopic, and it's that we cannot condone something as such as that. And the officers need to be professional, despite they are trained for situations like this, and they are trained. They know how to approach situations. And I can't say that. I know for a fact that there are refresher courses in terms of in firearms and also in use of force. I know that many officers are trained in terms of using a taser. I don't know if the officers had tasers at the time, but I can say that there were means and there were methods of which the officers could have employed, and they themselves should have kept themselves in check mentally, because not only are they in terms of executing their duty, but they are also in a public space where there are other civilians, there were lots of other civilians, and they should have known better. They should have acted much more professionally, because the attention has now been taken off of the individuals and now it has been placed on the officers.
Yeah.
I think what Camille said there is an important point. You're in the public. You're in a situation where unusually police officers, once in the public like that, are outnumbered. Right? That's why riot police have all that gear, so they could try to control the situation. But they could protect themselves. They could take a little bit of damage on the protection without actually having to now go into like a do or die fight with civilians. In this case, imagine now you kick him in the head a couple times, and then something else happens. Now, granted, they had firearms. They had pretty large firearms there. But imagine if the wrong attitude was pervasive among the crowd, where they're seeing police officers do this, they disagree with it, and they decide to intervene.
Yeah.
And now imagine, what if the officers were outnumbered? What would have happened? You see, we don't know. It's all about escalation or de-escalation. Police officers are supposed to be trained in de-escalation. And I don't know if it's not unique to TNT. You see this in the States. Police officers are supposed to be trained in de-escalation, and they cause a traffic stop to turn into some sort of tragedy or something unnecessary. This is not so simple. I get it, I understand. But at the end of the day, it also comes to the territory. Let's de-escalate the situation, because we don't want to incite a crowd. And then what are we going to do, right? We don't have a set of riot police with tear gas on you ready. We are literally in the middle of this crowd. Yeah. What happens if things get out of control?
Well,
and we have firearms. What happens if things get out of control and somebody else gets a hold of our firearms?
It was the caliber of firearms you also saw in these officers.
Yes.
So folks, in concluding, let me inform you that the Professional Bureau of Standards has already started an investigation that is according to Public Information Officer of the TTBS, ASP Sheridan Hill, who's also indicated that officers are not immune to the law, but as we pointed out at the beginning of the show, that videos do not tell the entire story, especially videos that are of that short. But Kemi rightfully pointed this out, we do not condone violence in any way whatsoever, and we do respect police officers, but we also expect police officers to carry out their duty diligently and with pride. At the end of the day, also to inform you that you are entitled to request an officer's badge number, their number. You are entitled, and they have to share with you that information. But at the end of the day, we can't keep crying and bawling wicked, 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 and all the semantics against the police and all these chastising comments and infuriating comments against the police when we don't play our duty, when we don't do our part. So bear that in mind as well. But I hope that the law does its part in this instance for both sides. Anyway, let's take a break. When we return, we take a look at another incident that transpired. It was on Tuesday night. We didn't get time on Wednesday to cover it. It was on Tuesday night. But we're sticking with the topic of lawlessness this morning. We'll be right back after this.
The Mary Immaculate Prayer Group and Friends presents its prayer breakfast on August 31st in aid of Monsignor Christian Pereira. The prayer breakfast begins from 9 a.m. at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Cost is only $200. Come support the Cup of Gratitude in aid of Monsignor Pereira, August 31st.
Tickets are available at the parish office of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception and the parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
It comes naturally to us. Unstoppable energy. We use it to manifest a future. A future where energy takes new forms and is used in new ways for all of us. The new age of energy is here.
Did you know that 1 in 4 children has an undetected eye problem? Their vision can change dramatically every year, from the blackboard to digital screens. 80% of learning starts with what our eyes perceive. Keep your child's future in focus at Ferreira Optical. Get complete eyewear for kids starting at only $695. Come into Ferreira Optical today. Conditions apply.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. Before we continue with our discussion, in which we're focusing on lawlessness this morning, Sean Michael Small, please share the Royal Castle question of the day with our viewers.
Well, of course, in light of yesterday's incident, we would like to hear from you. What do you think about this? Are you satisfied with the professionalism of members of the TTPS? Are you satisfied with their professionalism? Not just when they interact with you on minor things, if you ask for directions, but in the case of maybe you were speeding a little bit, maybe you see somebody, breaking a minor law or a major law. All of these things matter. Are you satisfied with their professionalism, their conduct, their manner, their behavior? Let us know.
Response of the TTPS as well. For example, ASP Sharon Hill stating that the PBS has already started an investigation.
Yes.
All that comes into play. But also, if you have a scenario or an experience that you were a part of, please share it with us as well.
Good or bad. It doesn't have to be bad.
Exactly.
We're not looking to paint one direction here. Good or bad, let us know.
Anyway, so sticking with the topic of lawlessness, it seems as though arson cases are on the rise. Because on Tuesday night, that's around, it was that Wednesday morning, it's around 12:45 a.m., CCTV footage captured an arson attack on 3 ambulances owned by Aid Allies Medical Limited, parked outside the Magnetic Resonance Imaging, or MRI Center in St. Clair, and the ambulances were valued at $1.2 million each. Now, no motive has been stated as yet for the attack, but we do have footage from the security cameras at this point. Let's take a look at it now. Welcome back to the program. So in viewing that, clearly you can see an individual smashing the glass and then throwing what seems to be flammable liquid into the ambulance and setting them on fire. He targeted 3 of them. Again, no motive has been stated as yet. Camille, I'll start off with you. Arson attacks are on the rise, and it's something that's very difficult to explain as to why. Usually it's done as a form of revenge, but in this instance, we don't know much about it.
Well, that's it. In all truth and honesty, I kind of wonder, when I heard the story 2 days ago, I wondered, I was like, why would someone go and attempt to firebomb 3 ambulances? But then I kind of zoomed in internally, and I'm thinking about the fact that maybe he's a fellow competitor, without trying to be speculative, but that's the only thing I can see. Why would someone go and firebomb 3 ambulances? And they are new ambulances, from what the news reports have stated. So it's certainly interesting, but arson on the whole, arson attacks on the whole have been rising, and certainly cause for people, it's not just a matter for the police, but it's also for us as citizens to take personal precautions and ensure that we keep our possessions safely. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point in relation to competitor, because Edgar Boot, who owns AAML, stated that he started the company roughly 8 months ago after being in the security business for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. And I think this just highlights again, we need to understand something that's fundamental for crime fighting, and that is the police officers are not able to physically prevent crime. The prevention comes from the fact that if the criminal justice system was working properly, then people will be less incentivized because they feel as though I'm not going to get away with it.
Well, not physically stop crime in instances like this, right?
In most cases, right? Because let's put it this way, how many times have you witnessed a murder or witnessed a traffic accident or whatever? Now, granted, police will stop people from doing the wrong thing on the roads when they encounter it, but they're not always going to encounter it. Now, so the prevention area, we're weak because our prosecution, detection, all of that is not where it should be. But the flip side is we do need to understand that ultimately speaking, even if we had that, crimes like these, they could still happen. And I guess it's a combination of we do need to do whatever we can to try to safeguard ourselves, prevent it, have cameras like in this case to try and collect evidence in case it happens. But unfortunately, the responsibility now of our society to not devolve into things like this ultimately is going to come into play.
You know, it gets me very upset, and I really can't use the terminology or language I'd like to on air, but it gets me very upset when I see things like this transpiring, because as much as we claim that it's a lawless land and the TTPS aren't doing their job and the Ministry of National Security, yes, all that is very much a part of the narrative, but also understand that people are bringing down our nation. We have lawless citizens who are just bringing down our nation. They don't care at all. They have absolutely no care in the world, because, I mean, they are most likely to get away with it. But still, in an instance like this, I mean, we're quick to point out police officers. Why is it, if you know this individual, why is it that you don't make a report anonymously to a police station? If you know this individual. Because at the end of the day, preventing crime is also part of our responsibility as citizens. It's not just up to the Ministry of National Security. What's appalling to Kemal is that a lot of criminals now don't seem to be wearing any disguises or mask anymore. They're just doing it, you know, in plain sight, without a care, it would seem.
Yes, that has been the trend over the last couple of years, because they don't see as a former commissioner used to say, they could get arrested with a firearm today and next 2 days they out on bail, and that's just the society we live in. But even in saying that and in acknowledging situations like that, people have just simply become lawless, and it starts with us. It starts from a simple thing as littering. That is breaking the law.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So exactly. when you start from young, and then you are easily encouraged and aided by other people, then you move into other things, and then you just escalate up the ladder, and there is where the gang influence comes in. You eventually join a gang, then you get hired and things like that, and you just a lawless society, and we just continue to live in it.
I remember growing up, just saying one bad word, and we may not even think of it as a bad word, but even growing up as a young individual, using a derogatory term, by any family member, it would have been by an uncle, an aunt, a grandparent, my parents, even my elder siblings, they would snap at you, and they would immediately correct you and put you in your place. I'm wondering if that's still taking place in homes now.
Now, in defense of the police service now, and this is not an excuse to remove all sins, but this is an explanation to understand why they are in a position that they're in. Certain officers might be a bit more combative than others because they're literally dealing with situations like this and in the quote-unquote trenches of what, you know, unfortunately might be termed the war on crime. And to some extent, because they're dealing with all of the ugliness in the society, you know, day after day after day after day. And it's not just the negative emotions of witnessing crime, but also at the end of the day, we need to remember that police officers are human beings. You know, they could be harmed just like any other human being. They could die from the same things that kill any other human being. So to some extent, some of their aggression is just a natural response of being in a high-stress situation over and over again. Now, this is where training is supposed to come into play. professionals are supposed to come into play to help them deal with that, and then maybe have counselors rotate them off of certain assignments, etc. Have ways to manage and cope with it. And I think maybe our police services now, as we spoke to the media ambassador Monday, they're now trying to put things in place. You know, for whatever reasons, we're not necessarily where we're supposed to be with it. We're not the only police service in the world that have these challenges and these problems. So please understand that. It's not an excuse, but it is maybe, you know, a reason to understand. So hopefully, if we as a society are less lawless and we cause less disruptions and less violence in our society, and then the police officers don't have to deal with the stress from violent situations as often, hopefully that might come down as well. And the police service will have a chance to be a bit more professional because they will be under less strain.
Well, I mean, that's one side of it. I still, and I understand where you're coming from, and in no means whatsoever do I condone the reaction of some police officers. But, you know, in concluding this particular part of our conversation, you know, I'm glad that we played the videos in the sequence that we did. You know, because it also points out that as much as we are quick to blame police officers, at the same time, society is decaying. Very much so, we're in a decay because citizens are just, like, they just have absolutely no sense of pride for their country or no sense of pride in society. And they're just influenced by this level of evilness to go and commit these heinous acts. And if we're decaying to this extent and this fast, I'm very sorry, Trinidad and Tobago. If you know somebody who has committed wrongdoing, don't try and take the law into your own hands. Please contact the TTPS and let the law deal with it. As much as we may not have faith in it, there's a reason why it's there and there's a reason why it's established. It's
still better than you taking it into your
Exactly,
hands.
and I'm very, very upset and frustrated that citizens are now doing this. Quick to blame the police, wicked and whatnot. Take a look at yourself in the mirror today. Camille, final thoughts on this particular topic?
Sure. So it's certainly for us as a society and as individual citizens, because it starts with us. Police who want civilians, so they should know better. But then we also have to look within ourselves and see where we could make amends and where we can actually help change and influence the lives of others around us.
Certainly, Camille. Well, thank you very much. Folks, we're going to take a break here on the program. On return, we welcome our commentator this morning. Usually we have them on Thursdays, but Dr. Faith B. Israel unfortunately starts meetings at 8 o'clock this morning. So we're very lucky and still very privileged to have with us our guest to join us in a few moments. So stay tuned to the program.
The Mary Immaculate Prayer Group and Friends presents its prayer breakfast on August 31st in aid of Monsignor Christian Pereira. The prayer breakfast begins from 9 a.m. at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Cost is only $200. Come support the Cup of Gratitude in aid of Monsignor Pereira, August 31st.
Tickets are available at the parish office of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception and the parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Turning our attention now to politics, which is all part of the conversation here on Talking Points. We are pleased and very happy to have once more joining us on the program, the Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress, Dr. Kirk Mayhew. Good morning, Dr. Mayhew, and thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Good morning to you all, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Dr. Mayhew, to start off the conversation, the issue surrounding the Attorney General, I mean, he has remained silent. Now, I always say give credit where credit is due, and I think the opposition has done very well, and especially sticking to this topic and really going after the issue, sticking to the issue. But there seems to be a lack of response on the government's part. I mean, even when the United National Congress stood up in Parliament, I believe it was on Monday, the acting Prime Minister, Colin Imwood, he was very, very bland in his responses, not giving much information at all. The AG has taken a vow of silence, and then we are on this program Wednesday, Member of Parliament for Portsmouth East, Keith Scotland, actually stating that the government fully stands and supports the Attorney General. How does United National Congress see this, and what's next for the UNC in ensuring that they keep pushing this issue?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. And the Newsday editorial this morning also pushes the issue, which I'm very glad they're doing. It's totally unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. I mean, and this is the contempt that the PNM have not only for, I mean, this particular instance is an example of a larger trend, which is the PNM's contempt for democracy. For example, they always like to say, they openly say they want to govern without an opposition getting in the way. Well, I'm sorry, parliamentary democracy means that the opposition is an integral part of the system. Parliamentary democracy means you must answer to the parliament. You are not elected in a 5-year dictatorship. This is the model the PNM have in their head. That you elect them, for 5 years, and they get to do whatever they want, and then in the 5 years, the population will get to decide. That is not what parliamentary democracy is. You are supposed to answer prime minister's questions. You are supposed to answer parliamentary questions. Many times, our questions in the parliament, and this is just in general, are not answered, just simply not answered, and every single one of the Prime Minister's questions to Kamla Persad-Bissessar have always been answered because we respect the process of parliamentary democracy. So this is an egregious example of that general principle that the PNM displays. And this is perhaps the most glaring one. The cabinet, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, is composed of the Prime Minister and the Attorney General at the minimum. That is the necessary two. Right? You can have a government of just two people, but it has to be those two people. And both of them are out of the country now, which is itself a question, something to note. But and then these allegations on the Attorney General, for them to be silent is total contempt to the population, and we reject it.
Well, Dr. Mayhew, I do have to ask. Now, let me be clear. Not only do I have no defense, so I'm not willing to try to defend the situation, but I have spoken out against his predecessor as well for the job that his predecessor did being unacceptable. Now, in this case, I think, however, we do have to consider two things. One, the question of perjury, whether we like it or not, probably needs to be tried in Miami. I don't think, since it happened on foreign soil, I don't think we could necessarily settle that issue, whether it's perjury or not here. Now, I think there's also a second question with regards to the office of the AG is handling this case, but the AG was disqualified from being a part of the case. That's literally a serious question that I don't think has any precedent from the past. Is there any consideration to seeing where these two issues might be resolved or how they might be resolved before we necessarily look at calling for the AG to be removed? Now, this is not a defense of his position. This is more just me looking at the processes of we've seen another situation where allegations were used against office holder just last year. Should we still respect due process?
We should always respect due process, but that does not mean, for instance, in the highest Westminster tradition, you respect due process while you step back and out of your position. So the due process is for the individual. The individual does not have, Reggie Armour or any individual does not have a right to office. That is not your constitutional human right that you should be an Attorney General. Your constitutional human right is that Reginald Armour is deserving of due process, not the Attorney General. Not that Reggie Armour needs to be Attorney General while due process is going on. Mm-hmm. You need to clear your name. And this is exactly, again, going back to Kamla Persad-Bissessa's government. She followed the highest traditions of Westminster. Whenever there was an allegation, she asked the person to step down and clear the name. And she wanted to make that a tradition in Trinidad and Tobago. But we had decades of other traditions before where we ignored that, and I suppose the 5 years wasn't enough, and people were actually skeptical and criticizing her for following the highest parliamentary tradition. But to get to the specifics of the question now, is it possible to do something else? I don't think so at all. I mean, the only thing is what they're doing is they're being stubborn and not letting go and remaining in office. But that is untenable. The Attorney General has been disqualified from representing the state of Trinidad and Tobago. That is an unprecedented constitutional crisis that the PNM have put us in, and it is such an irresponsible position. I mean, this is one of the first things that should have been asked or should have been disclosed. Right? So this speaks to the irresponsibility.
So we just want to let Camille get a chance, and I know, Camille, you have to go just now. Do you have any questions for Dr. Mayhew, PRO of the UNC?
Sure. Dr. Mayhew, should the AG choose to remain silent, how would the UNC now treat this matter? And I would also like to ask you, does the UNC plan to write to the Integrity Commission on this matter?
The UNC has several plans, and those things are some of them. Now let me tell you, there are certain legal avenues that one could take. And a lot of times people say, well, why doesn't the UNC take this one to court, that one to court? Well, look at this matter. This matter has been going on since 2004. So this is one of the disadvantages of taking things to court in the Trinidad system. It may not get resolved early. It sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't. But we are looking at legal options and to see what can be done in terms of allowing him to move. But then this is where politics comes in, right? Because when the legal system or the constitutional system may be slow or unresponsive, this is where politics has to come in. This is where they say politics is the highest court. In that sense, the population we have to demand that we are governed by higher standards. And yes, the courts are there to do that for us, but ultimately it's up to us as citizens to demand the highest standards of behavior from those who govern us.
Well, Dr. if I may just say that something I wanted to point out is the fact that the opposition leader on a political platform without the protection of Parliament has stated that the Attorney General had lied on a sworn affidavit. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because we are yet to hear any sort of legal action taken by the Attorney General to subdue the opposition leader. He hasn't sued for defamation of character or for any sort of malice intended against him. And I think that is very important to note. So that in itself may point towards something, but the part of this, the motion of no confidence that we're hearing is about to take place. The population has seen a motion of no confidence in former Minister Franklin Chan, may he rest in peace, as well as Stuart Young. We've heard the opposition bring motions of no confidence before. I mean, at this particular point in time, the opposition seems to be going at all avenues to really highlight this issue. So if we know that the motion of no confidence will not pass, but if it is likely, should we be giving the AG the opportunity to resign, or should we now lay focus on the Prime Minister who, yes, he's out of the country, but even the acting Prime Minister has remained silent and no action has been taken till this point? Bear in mind the LATT is giving 30 days, before this happens.
Yeah, those are very good points about the outside of Parliament, and it's very, very significant and very important that we are, the opposition leader is saying these things outside of Parliament and has not been challenged. But yeah, about the motions of no confidence, I'd just like to say a few things. Now, let's briefly look at them. With Franklin Chan, the government never put that to a vote. And the reason is that I don't think they had enough members and they would have lost that motion of no confidence because it's so close. Remember, I think Camille Robinson Regis was out of the country at the time. I think some people were absent, and I think we had the majority on that day, and so they never brought it. That's how close we are in the Parliament. That's how close we are to government, in fact. And let's say Stuart Young. Stuart Young has actually since been removed as Minister of National Security. Right? We know that the raw numbers generally will not work if everybody is there. There is the outside possibility that not everybody is there. The Prime Minister is not there now. Sometimes people are sick. Sometimes people are just plain absent. So this is something. But then the other thing is that given the limited powers we have in our Constitution, because our Constitution, in fact, as written, when you compare it, and Justice Peter Jamadar and I wrote this, in our 2008 book, right, a long time ago, before I had actually joined the UNC, on democracy and constitution reform in Trinidad and Tobago. I was also the head of the Vision 2020 Constitution Reform Subcommittee in 2003. We had analyzed this quite extensively. Our Constitution is really so democratically weak. Our Parliament has so little power. Like, for instance, in the United States, before anybody is appointed, they have to be approved by the Senate. And we had a provision like this in the 1955 Constitution in Trinidad and Tobago, but Eric Williams hated it and he removed it. He didn't want Parliament. And so the motions are one of our few constitutional tools. Remember, so we have constitutional tools, legal tools, and political tools, and we have to use all three.
Well, I want to transition because we actually have two other topics that we would like to get to now, and I'll use some of what you just said in the transition. You all were talking about various motions the UNC has brought to Parliament. Now, not only do we have recently the AG, the new AG, under fire. That's not necessarily new for that office. But we also have a member of Parliament, a minister, Ministry of Youth Development, who's also under fire now. His situation or allegations against him, which your colleague, Senator Lakshmi Dayal, brought forward publicly, and which the minister has decided to threaten legal action or to take legal action.
He actually took legal action. And he lost it in court.
Right. So which, that by itself has a certain degree of questionable tactics, in my opinion. But I do wonder, I do say this about the opposition. I believe there's a little bit too much of crying wolf too often. And then when the real wolves come now and we need people to focus on these individuals, sometimes that does not happen. Because with regards to the AG, while I think that it's a very important political situation, there are other situations, like potentially what's going on with the Minister of Youth Development, Foster Cummings. These are some serious questions, I think, that we need to be answered with regards to his political career moving forward.
Yeah, so I can understand your point. I think you're really talking about, which one is more important, the Foster issue or the AG issue?
Well, those two are important, but I'm saying like other motions maybe might have weakened the tool of bringing a motion of no confidence. For when now we have times like this when we need the tool to be strong, to send a clear message, the message is dulled.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but in defense, I think that unfortunately, sometimes public opinion of what is important is not necessarily the same thing as what is actually important and what is structurally important. So, you know, things like the energy sector, right? The collapse of the energy sector is so fundamental to the survival of our country, and that's why we brought a motion. Now, this may not be the sexiest issue to talk about gas pricing and this type of thing, right? So we understand that, and so we're caught in a dilemma in that sense in public relations, that there's an important issue which unfortunately is not sexy, right? And it's technical and bores people, but it's very important, and we have to do that as well. So I understand that some people might think that, oh, this is just so boring, it's unimportant, but trust us, we are doing this because we know that it's important to the life of our nation. So with the Foster Cummings issue, again, these things have been said outside of the public domain because we have the documents. We show, and this is something, every time we come with something, there's new allegations against Foster, which we found out about plagiarism, his plagiarism, and I will say no more than that, right? But let's just say we are always backed up whenever we say things in the public domain because we're ready for court if necessary, as Jayanti has proven.
Kemuel, a final question for Dr. Mayo.
So Dr. Mayo, I think it isn't necessarily in the sense that you all it may not be the sexiest to talk about, but I think it's in the sense that you all are possibly exhausting the few avenues that you all have. So would you agree that consistently bringing motions of no confidence in ministers, and now that you are actually bringing a motion of no confidence that needs to be properly ventilated, that the population may not take you seriously?
Okay, this is a very good point. And what we are doing in doing this is actually exposing the weakness of our Constitution, right? Because if this is the only tool that we have in the Constitution, then shouldn't we have more? Like we used to have in 1955, or like parliaments around the world have, or like the United States had with the congressional hearings. Because let's say we had to vet the AG before he was appointed, we definitely would have dug this stuff up. Trust me, right? And this is what a robust Constitution should do. And this is why, I personally have been calling for constitutional reform for decades now. People in this country have been calling for constitutional reform for decades. And maybe this will wake people up to say, wait, maybe the parliament needs more powers, because can it really be that we submit a question to the parliament and the minister says, well, I don't know the answer, or I don't have that answer, and that is acceptable? But that is the current rules of the Constitution.
We're almost out of time. I just have one quick question. As we're on the topic of reform, I have been saying several times now that we should remove the cabinet from members of parliament. It should be two separate entities to have proper separation of powers. Do you, 30 seconds, you think that has any merit?
Absolutely, it has merit. I agree. And the UNC and PP have done tons of consultations, which we started with the constitutional reform, and when we get back in, we are going to continue with that.
Well, Dr. Mayo, I want to thank you very much. I mean, the selection process may have been proven to be flawed, but due diligence cannot be bypassed. And in instances like this, I always say give credit where credit is due, as I repeated at the beginning of the show, and I hope to see the UNC applying more pressure, but, constructively, not just criticizing for criticizing's sake, constructively and bringing the issues to the forefront. My final question, again, 10 seconds. Does the UNC plan to continue applying the pressure to Foster Cummings on that situation?
Absolutely. We will not let up. This is extremely important.
Well, Dr. Mayo, thank you very much for your time this morning, and all the very best.
And to you too. It's been a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Very soon. Folks, WSNL breaks for news on the hour.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One-on-One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One-on-One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One-on-One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital. Camille Pascal has left us this morning. He has to continue his duties elsewhere. We thank him very much, and we also thank Dr. Mayhew for joining us on the program this morning.
So an interesting discussion. And again, as you said, give them props for when they say good things. And he said something I think was very, very big there with regards to saying that if we had confirmation hearings, the opposition would have most likely caught the issue with the candidacy of Reginald Amor. And to the government, I would just like to point out the fact that, A, if they didn't catch the issue and they approved of him, then they won't be able to criticize him. So there's a reason to have these things that will work for you. It will prevent problems like this and prevent the criticisms by the other side
I know we're talking about 12 plus years. I understand that, and I don't like to go back to 2010 to 2015 because even though it may affect us today, it's in the past, it's a past government. The issue I have is that the United National Congress is seeing all that now. They're seeing a lot of things now. My only concern is that the the PNM government has a very clear argument in that in 5 years while you were there, you all did not implement or do any of these things, such as confirmation hearings.
To be fair, not everybody that makes up the UNC opposition now was the people in the People's Partnership government then. Now, if you want to level that criticism at the opposition leader, I think that's fair, right? I think that's very fair. However, with regard to the opposition as a whole, it's not the same thing. I think it's similar to telling the Prime Minister, stop riding on the coattails of your predecessors in the PNM. You know, this is your first administration, this is your first go at being Prime Minister. Yes, you had a part of previous administration, but, you know, it's a different PNM now, it's a different UNC now, different bodies now.
Well, let's open up the phone lines this morning and give you, the viewer, the opportunity to join us on the program. If there's anything that you'd like to contribute with the discussions that we had this morning as well as our interview, please feel free to do so. Be mindful of your time and always be respectful of the language that you use as other callers. Before we take the first call, Sean, just remind them of our Royal Castle question of the day.
Very quick, are you satisfied with the professionalism of members of the TTPS? Call in, let us say what you have to think. I think we have a call already from Diego Martin.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Paul and Mr. Shah.
Small.
No, it's fine. Paul is fine.
Paul and Shah. Sorry. My apologies. 3 institutions, I have always said, have us in this predicament. The TTPS, the judiciary, and the press. And I will give you 2 points to highlight that. The press has not big up the El Dorado Hindu School for commissioning their sporting complex. The cowshed to the Numero Uno Primary School in Trinidad and Tobago now. And people have to understand, they have just commissioned a sporting club with an 80 feet Olympic size pool based on the investment of an Indian citizen who came to Trinidad and become nationalist, Kawandalal. And that is a philanthropist, has put his money where his mouth is. And I'm hearing the press saying nothing about that. What their vision is to basically transform the educational system from primary school, not only academics, but sporting. They want to produce Olympic swimmers, cricketers, everything. And people that should be all over the television, all over, to show what they have done. It's $1 million investment in the human capital of the country. And I'm saying from cowshed to where we're going now.
All right,
the other thing I want to say,
quick.
Where the press is at the fault again, and the police service. You remember a fella by the name of Dillian, who got protection and asylum in the UK? He is given that because there were credible evidence to say a high judicial official and the law enforcement conspired to do him harm. That is why, in the judgment that I want to say, where is the PCA in that investigation? Where is the TTPS in that? Gary Griffith was police commissioner there. We have a new one. The press is not asking these things. These are serious things that has sullied our name internationally at judiciary and the law enforcement.
We'll call it that's a fair point.
I'm going for the day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The PCA's role in all this is a very, very good point, Colin.
Just to respond to his first point, I think it's because our presses are maybe perhaps too dependent on press releases to promote initiatives. I don't know if that initiative that you highlighted did go through those motions of press releases reaching out to the press to try to get coverage. And if they did, well, I'm not sure exactly what happened.
I also think to a certain degree, whilst this has nothing to do directly with the story that you've highlighted, and kudos very much for actually transforming education, but press has become very much politicized as well, so we have to bear that in mind. Caller line with us from Dabadi. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning. You're live.
Yes, good morning to you guys.
Morning.
Yeah, I'm calling from Dabadi, yeah. And thanks for the opportunity again to contribute to the party discussions, gentlemen.
Sure.
I want to speak on the issue of the police first.
Sure.
And their professionalism. I think they are very far from being professional. And I want both of you all to think for a while and tell me which institution within Trinidad and Tobago actually displays true professionalism. I'm not saying that two wrongs make a right. The police is totally wrong with respect to their actions, and they are very unprofessional.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not hear any of you all speak about leadership while they were out there. A young officer cannot run and take action just like that. And more than likely, they were being paid extra duty. There were senior officers. There were more officers than were actually necessary for that set. And I think too that we should have seen some formal leadership from senior officers directing how the action should be taken, because as one of you all said, this could have escalated into something very serious, stampede, and I don't want to say hundreds, but a few more persons could have been injured. Right? Putting that aside,
quickly, caller, because we have other callers.
I don't recall both of your names, so please excuse me.
That's fine. That's fine.
One of you all stated that with respect to the opposition, that is a different opposition, a different composition. I beg to disagree that it is the same organization, and regardless of the composition of that organization, they were very, that they didn't have the composure, and they did not do what was right at that point in time. And regardless of the composition today, I must say that the opposition was the opposition, and they still are not doing what is right. I'll just take one final point, gentlemen. I'm in total disagreement with the spin doctor, Dr. May, who I had a lot of respect for him, and he did not answer the questions as I think that he ought to, as let's say, not professional, I'm looking for the word in his category, where he would have been exposed to tertiary at the highest level. And he just operated as a propaganda, whatever the word is.
Caller, I must apologize. I'm sorry for intervening, but we do have another caller on the line.
I don't mind you to cut me off at this time, but I want to say thanks a lot, and you guys have a wonderful day.
You too.
Doctor, I'm listening. Wonderful program for your objectivity as usual.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much for your points. We have a caller on the line with us from Port of Spain. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, in response to the question, the Royal Castle question of the day,
yes,
let me say that if you plant, yesterday was a planting day in the country, and if you plant corn yesterday, in time to come you will get corn.
Yes.
If you plant sugar, you will get sugar, sugar cane. Well, I did say in an earlier conversation with you all that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service under Gary Griffith was being militarized. The fact that they are wearing camouflage uniforms and so on and so forth. They have masks on and so on. So that you can't even talk to one of these guys sometimes. And in that scenario, there clearly, if you look at it closely, there seemed to be very little dialogue. There might have been dialogue before, but in the context of what transpired there, it is unacceptable. And that is the kind of thing you would not see in a professional police service. The police officers would have surrounded the man, and he knew he couldn't go a place. I'm saying we have trained our men, particularly under the last police commissioner, to be soldiers. And so we have sown the seeds of creating soldiers, and soldiers react to people differently to how a police would react to a trained police officer would react to individuals. I rest my case this morning.
Thank you very much, caller. We have a caller on the line with us from Chagones. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning,
Good morning.
Professor.
Well, I really have no confidence in any government issue.
Fair enough.
But at least the police may have a reason. Because normally you have oversight passing through the permanent secretary.
Mhm.
And as we determined sometime before,
Yes.
governments have destroyed that.
Yes.
Yes.
And now they're going straight to the Service Commission, who really is an oversight body,
Mhm.
not a supervisory body. When this was done, the then head of, I think it was Mr. Ken Gordon, said, well, they didn't have staff to do that, and they asked for staff to investigate. And up to now, that have not been dealt with.
Mhm.
That, in my opinion, contributes to the problem with the police. I'm not saying it's the only reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Any
That's yeah.
question, gentlemen? Or?
None, Professor, but thank you very much for
Thank
your
you very
points.
much, Professor.
Thank you.
That's a very good point.
It's an excellent point, actually.
Because there's questions about the independence of the Service Commission from the political body, right? So, Professor, if you have an issue with the government somewhat dismantling the checks and balances of the TTPS, I mean, the implications of what happened from last year into this year, we still don't have a substantive commissioner of police.
We don't have a police service commission.
Well, we do. We don't? We do.
We have a police service commission, but
They
what
just-
are they doing?
Yeah, right.
So probably the wrong phrasing
They
of the two.
restarted the process, and they seem to be taking a lot longer
So-
than the last Service Commission.
Forgive me for the wrong, phrasing of what I meant to say. But I mean, like, what are they doing?
So-
When last did you hear from them? We have a caller in line with us from San Fernando.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Good morning, caller.
Gentlemen, morning.
Good morning, sir.
That situation, well, firstly the question.
Mhm.
It will be based on your personal interaction, right? That question that you'll have. I don't
Yes.
ask the question. And my answer to that is, I am satisfied. I have been in various interactions with them
Mhm.
on various levels, and I think they are professional based on the level of training that I see there. I think they're professional.
Mhm.
That doesn't give them a blight with that situation.
Yeah.
However, you confront the police in that manner, you can't expect ice cream and cake.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is the sad thing about that young men in this country have reached the stage where they think they can challenge the police physically.
Yes. Yes.
That is the situation there where the degradation of the society.
Yeah.
One other quick thing I want to mention.
Sure.
About the judiciary. This morning, there's an article in the newspaper where two men who have been on remand for 20 years have gotten bail in the sum of $3.5 million total.
After
for
20
both of them, I
years.
think.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
They have been given bail, and if you look at the slew of charges against these gentlemen, but they have been given bail. However, the same judiciary that is not functioning properly have these men on remand for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We really need constitutional reform, and I hope next time you'll have Mr. Mayhew there, Kirk Mayhew, that he could talk to that, because he used to speak to that a lot when he was in his own party.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my contribution.
Thank you,
caller.
Thank you very much, caller. I appreciate it. Caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Peter.
Morning,
Mr. Fisherman.
How are you going?
I'm pretty alright. What I want to say about the police, I find the police is doing a good job. But when the police has come from the same cloth, from the same community of the normal individual. And if you really check it out in all the news and all these clippings, these guys and them as being police trouble, they want the police to do their job.
Yeah.
Now, I really don't know what goes on there, but I find the police should use more force on them.
Well.
Because these guys are not giving the police a chance to do their job. If you get hold of something, why is there resistance and arrest for? The police is the law, they have the reform.
Yeah.
And if you give these guys a chance, for instance, I have a view in Claxton Bay, where they're telling the police, this is Claxton Bay, or they can come here and do what they want.
That,
you understand what I'm
yeah, I do. Very much so. I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Right, so they are getting police in real trouble. Police are human beings too.
Yeah.
They are individuals just as me and you. They have everything, you understand me?
Yeah, I do.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Fisherman.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. I understand what you're saying, but the kicks that he had were unfortunately a bit too excessive.
Now, there's an actual, in law enforcement, there's an actual definition of use of force which clearly outlines it. But I think what we need to do is probably elaborate a bit further on that term force, so that we get a better understanding of force. I don't think
it's very subjective. Huh?
Yeah, I don't think the professor means kick the man in his head more. The fisherman. I don't think he means kick the man in his head more. I don't think that's what he means. I understand what he's saying, but I guess the terminology needs a bit more defining.
Sorry, Mr. Fisherman, but with that said, I think the main point he was trying to make that the police should have been, and it's kind of, I think, maybe similar to what I was saying, to put it in a different context. The police should have, like 4 of them should have just taken him one time and just put him on the ground and subdue him one time. Not this whole kind of, hey, what are you doing? And slap and kick and thing and nah.
Well, let's just remind you of the Royal Castle question of the day before we go to our next caller, Mr. Sean Michael Small.
Are you satisfied with the professionalism of your TTPS? Because they're ours. They're our police service. We
have a
need them
caller.
to be good.
We have a caller on the line with us from Tunapuna. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good program as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In respect of the police, what was the question? Just remind me.
Are you satisfied with their professionalism? How they behave, how they act?
To a certain degree, but very minimum, because we have a very minimum amount of them who are professionals. And the rubber cops that they are called far outweigh them. Now, to strengthen my point, if we get data, we would be able to justify my statement. I want you all and the wider population to take into consideration data in respect of how many police officers, how many regiment personnel, and how many bandits came from the same home. And I think that would solve the problem where crime it is in this country. Because we all from the same environment. And you all must do some work on that. You will be surprised. Very, very surprised in the data of how many of the army, police, and bandits from the same home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you.
I would just like to highlight with regards to what a previous caller said about the judiciary and the 20 men on bail.
Yeah.
We need
not 20 men.
20 years,
Yeah.
sorry, 20 years without bail, and now they're in bail. Over half of our prison population is in remand, and we are, I believe, within the top 35. We are significantly high on the rate of incarceration in the world.
I think in 20...
Right? We're in the top 6. We're one of the in the top 6 of all countries, 210, I believe.
So when 2022, that means in 2020, when I was speaking to an ex-commissioner, I used to get information from the prisons on the population, and that population used to increase daily. And it's very surprising, not only the population of the male prisoners, but the population of the female prisoners. So the issue that one of, I think Camille
most societies
states,
don't have a high female prison population, by the way.
Right, and I think Camille pointed it out. He says that a former commissioner stated that a man who's held with a gun could be out on bail in 2 days. Now, whilst we need a way to try and rehabilitate individuals back into our society, at the same time, getting bail so easily for a charge such as a gun, I mean, what makes you think that individual's not going to pick up a gun and use it forcibly in another instance? So these things are things that need to address. But
what's even worse is there was also a report that said that, the guns end up back on the street.
Exactly.
They don't stay in custody. They're not destroyed.
What happens with all the guns that the police seize in the barrels, in the warehouse, And because I don't think police are obligated to show up to court.
Now, with regards to the last caller's point, one thing though, and this might sound bad to say, but unfortunately I'm going to say it, there is a tendency that if a family is in a situation where one of the children enter into crime, there's a good chance that one of the other children might also enter into crime. and potentially violent crime. So I don't want to necessarily say how I know that. I just know that that is quite possible, right? So very, 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 very realistic that happens.
Well, that's a point. What they call this in San Fernando, 20 years in remand. That's not even 20 years in prison with a verdict of guilty, 20 years in remand.
And we have a story from a valued viewer that we haven't yet made public that is a horrific example of the justice system.
So 3.5 million.
A poor example of the justice system.
I wonder that 3.5 million in bail, if that was the state's way of trying to compensate for those 20 years in terms of how much it would have cost to keep those individuals in remand for 20 years. How much would it have cost the state?
There's a lot with regards to that part of the justice system process, of which the TTPS is part of it still, in the prosecution, in court. There's a lot that needs to be cleared up there. There's a lot of weaknesses there. You might even argue that there are more weaknesses there, both from the judiciary and from the DPP's office, the AG's office, and the police prosecutors, than, say, the police detection and investigation and patrolling and those services.
And then the very final thing, so what they call it from Claxton Bay was indicating, you can't come to Claxton Bay, this wee area, you think you could come here and have any wrong. How often do I hear that? Many, many times. Police can't come here, boy. Police can't do nothing. That means nothing. They can't come to our area at all. I am fed up. I'm tired of hearing that. This is the thing. We complain so much about the police. We complain so much about the TTPS, and yet we hide those who are lawless. We defend those who are lawless. We will always stand in front of those who are lawless when the TTPS is trying to carry their job, but then criticize the TTPS in other instances. I don't understand Trinidad and Tobago society anymore, you know. I'm trying very, very hard to try and understand. You can't tell me, Sean, how you could say the TTPS can't come here, they can't do nothing.
Part of it, I think, is that we have the unfortunate situation where, we know them, they're from us, they're good boys, you know? But those are the criminals. No, those are real criminals.
The good boys, why? Because they're paying our electricity bill every month? Because we could get a box of KFC from them? Because they pay for it?
Because they gave their mother a fridge, because they bought food hampers for the community.
And how did they do that? How did they come about doing that?
And that there is the thing. I think people need to understand. There's this interesting phenomenon in life where people don't necessarily question where things come from. And they don't realize that sometimes for you to have certain things meant that somebody took something from somebody else. And if it's the case of drugs or racketeering, protection rackets or whatever, right? You might not have taken the chicken out of the other person's hand, but you're still taking something from someone for that chicken to be bought.
I really hope that individual who committed that act of arson is found. Even the individuals that committed that the act of arson in Santa Cruz against the construction equipment a couple of weeks ago. I wonder what's the latest in relation to that.
And I'll just, final point with regards to Dr. Mayhew being a spin doctor. He's the PRO of the UNC. We expect some defense of his organization. That's to be expected. However, I think these last two appearances that we've had on his show, it's been reasonable points that he's put forward to defend his position. I wish more defenses were as well thought out. If you think that is spin, well then I don't want to know about some of the other nonsense we hear from the politicians of both parties.
The thing about this is that we will always point out where we see flaws, constructively, as I mentioned, where we see flaws and whatnot. I mean, and credit to Dr. Mayhew, the man has a point and he sticks by it. No matter how much fire you throw at him, he sticks his point. So. Anyway,
are they crying wolf? Well, it's one of the few tools they have. So
Sean Michael Small, that's it for the week as we enter a long weekend. I hope you've stocked up on your Nescafe.
I mean, today's a
good day to have a Nescafe.
Yes, but also
a good day to have a good day.
There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to Camille, Dr. Kirk Mayhew, and thank you very much, Sean Michael Small. To all those in master control and part of WSN's production house, we thank you very much. This has been Talking Point. I'm Keaton Shaw, wishing you a safe and enjoyable weekend, and hopefully, if all things go well, we'll see you Tuesday morning. Goodbye.
Today is a good day to have a Nescafe.